This week on my sewing journey, I've been working on a simple project bag. Now before you get upset, it is a lot simpler than it looks. It may look a little difficult, but it's not. First, what you're going to do is go for your stash looking for fabric. I would recommend doing that because, especially for the project bags, because you don't need much for those. I used a fat quarter for the back, some vintage fabric for the lining in here, and some scraps to cover up the raw edges. So as you can see, going for your stash might be a good idea. I had this vinyl on hand. Now for your vinyl for this project, if you want to have the vinyl for the cover there, you don't have to, but if you want to, I would suggest getting the vinyl from a craft department. They sell it on rolls, or sometimes in a package, folded up. You want a heavy vinyl. You don't want something really, really thin, because every time you put something in, you're going to be scraping against that vinyl and you want it to last. You don't have to use zippers, but I did use zippers in some of these, but you don't have to use them. You can use hook and loop tape. So basically, this is what you're going to do. You're going to cut your back fabric 18 long by 12 and a half wide. So the width across here will be 12 and a half wide. The width across here will be 12 and a half wide, but this will be 18 inches long. And then you're going to make your decision if you want to quilt it. Now, if you want to quilt it and you are using vintage fabric, please test your friction pen, if you're going to use friction pens, on a scrap, because look what happened. I am stuck with those black lines on this project forever. This is vintage fabric. It would not iron off. I couldn't get it to, and I was afraid of burning the fabric, so I just decided I'm going to have to live with it. To quilt it, you would get some quilt batting. I would recommend the thin one. And you're going to draw your lines diagonal, or if you want to do freestyle, free motion quilting, that would be great too. You can make some really nice designs on there. But if you want to just do this style quilting, I used the width of my ruler to make my lines, and I made them diagonal. And then you just sew all the way down each way, and then sew across, and that's quilting it. And you're going to sew that with the back fabric, the lining fabric. This is the lining right in here. You're going to sew those two like that. Next, you're going to take your vinyl. Now my vinyl was a little short, which actually worked out to be better. So if you're not used to working with vinyl, you might want to try it this way. I put a piece of fabric on the side because my vinyl kind of ends right there, and it needed to end right here. So what I did was I folded it, cut the fabric, folded it over so right sides were facing the vinyl, and then sewed down it, and then pulled it out like this so that it would meet the end there. And I did that all the way around my vinyl. And if you're going to put in a zipper, I do recommend zipper or Velcro. Either way, you should put on top of your vinyl a little piece of fabric for the zipper casing or the Velcro, because it would be a lot easier than fighting with it. And I had to lift mine up like this to sew it through the machine, trying to keep it really, really straight to get it through there. So after you do that, I would recommend putting in your closure, because you haven't sewed your sides yet, and it would be a lot easier to put your closure in there. So if you're going to use a zipper, follow the instructions on the zipper, because they all come with them. If you're going to use Velcro, put your Velcro there, sew on both of them, lining it up. Now, when you do the actual sewing of the sides on this, so let's pretend that we've got our closure on there, and we're all lined, and we got our lining. I would recommend closing the project, because you're not going to be turning it to any right sides. This style doesn't have the vinyl. And this one I decided to do a ruffle on. So if you want to decorate it, you might want to do it in this state when it's kind of disassembled. To do a ruffle, 2 inches wide. You cut your fabric 2 inches wide, and I did double the length of the width. Then what you do is you hem both sides, the top and the bottom, and then you sew a running stitch down, and then you sew another running stitch down so that when you pull it, it makes the ruffle. If you're going to do it by machine, use the largest setting on your machine for that to make it easier to pull through. If you're not going to do that, you're going to do it by hand, lock in your end. The first stitch you do, lock it in really good so when you pull, you don't pull it out. Now for the little baggie, you can use a parachute clip, or you can use a simple loop system where I took some ribbon, made a loop, and then I took some Velcro and a leftover scrap of the owl fabric. So folding the fabric in and hemming it, and then sewing it on there so I can take this off, and this one's done with Velcro. Now if you wanted to use the parachute clip style, which this one has, you make your loop pretty much the same way, folding your ends in, kind of like a belt loop, sewing it, threading the parachute clip through, and sewing it to your project, then threading another little loop through the other end of the clip, doing the same, folding all those raw edges in so you don't have strings all the time, and then sewing it onto the back of your little mini bag. This one has no vinyl, no quilting, and it is Velcro instead of a zipper. And the only thing I did do is I put this there so I can tell what's in it without opening it. I can slide in what I put in there. It's the same exact style, same exact everything. I did line this one, so if you wanted to line it, would make it a little better. I cut my lining fabric the same sizes as the actual project. So the back piece is that 18 long by 12.5 wide. The front panel lining is the 12.5 square. And that's how you would line it. I put that brick back to make it look pretty. This one, done pretty much the same. I know a family member is going to claim that one. And so with this one, I know a family member is going to claim this one. And this one too, with the dogs and the vinyl. They're all pretty much done the same. And as you can see, they're not really that hard to do. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you like this idea, and happy